Hello and welcome to Insight. I'm Kusum Wijetilleke. My guest today is a Member of Parliament for Colombo District, Honorable Dr. Harsha De Silva. So welcome to Insight.
Thank you, Kusum.
So Dr. Harsha, before we get into the political aspect, there's a lot of conversation about our parliamentarians and a lack of qualifications, a lack of experience. Some openly wonder how some of these people even got into Parliament. But yourself, you were a former banker, you have a doctorate in economics. So I just want to go back. Something we have in common is that we both worked at DFCC Bank. Could you give us a little bit of a background on how you ended up at DFCC in the first place?
Sure. I joined DFCC as a young PhD. I was still in my 20s. I studied development economics. My PhD is in that, with outside in finance. So my real love has always been finance and development. Subsequently, I've done other things, but the core is how do you liberalize markets, create opportunities for development. So I recall once I invited Mr. Wickremesinghe. He was a general manager at NDB. He was visiting the US on some official work, and he came to the University of Missouri where I was studying and teaching at the same time, as most senior PhD students do. And wonderful experiences he shared with our entire class. We had graduate students from across the world, from Korea to Africa to Central and South America. So this has been something that I've always been interested in. So that's why I joined the DFCC. Interestingly, I tell this to my friend Ruwan. Ruwan and I were the final candidates for the job. and he had a PhD from France and I had one from the US. And the DFCC being DFCC picked me. And he went to do different things. So that's when I got involved in DFCC. But I must tell you, Mr. Fernando was his soul rest in peace, but I've told him that I'm going to continue to mention this. So the first day I was at work, Mr. Prelis and others were Mr. Ratnayaka, these are the guys who were running it, and Mr. Fernando was a senior DGM in charge of credit. He wasn't in the panel. So he called me. I said, "Who are you?" I said, "Sir, I'm Harsha De Silva." What do you do? I said, "Sir, this is my first day. I'm the chief economist." I was the only economist, I think. And he said, I said, "Tell me how you give a loan." I said, "Sir, we have all these engineers downstairs. They do all these analysis and they look at the project and they do the feasibilities and then they run it through all these models and then you give." I say, "That's not how you give a loan, man. You're redundant. Go away." My first day. So I said, "So that's really odd, How do you give a loan?" I say, "You just find out what the collateral is and you match the collateral with the loan." Right? And I am going to continue to say this because this is a fact. And even though DFCC was a development bank, NDB was a development bank, even those days, this is how development finance was done. Right? And subsequently, when I was in DFCC, we were the best managed company. We were the highest market cap on the stock exchange. Our bonuses were really good. And suddenly, you see, there was an undertaking by Madam Kumaratunga to reform the two state banks. This was in the would have been 96 or sometime, somewhere around that time. ADB and World Bank had agreed on a plan, and she reneged on it. And they said, "Look, we are going to cut your long-term credit lines." But our people protested, but they went ahead and did it anyway. And suddenly, this bank was lending long, borrowing short, which is completely dry. There was no resources, long-term resources available. And then one day I was called into the board meeting around 8 o'clock at night and said, from tomorrow you're the treasurer of this bank. I told Mr. Prelis, oh, hold it, there are 2 triple accountants in this bank, right? Lovely guys, Mr. Nagarajan and yeah, and
Was it Nagendra?
Nagendra.
Yes.
And then I said, well, they said, we were not looking for bean counters, when we're looking for somebody to think about the future. And so that's how I took the treasury, and we were bleeding like anything. There were days that I would come to work. Before I come to work, in the loo, I would have borrowed 600 million rupees in the morning. And you're talking 1997, 96, right? And I would come to office, call money rates would be 30%. The moment they see me, it goes to 40, 50, 60. And there was one particular day, Kusum, Sanjeeva Sennaga was my, he was the treasurer at NDB. Both of us were in deep trouble. And Sanjeeva had gone to Singapore that day looking for money. And there was somebody acting on his behalf, and he called me around, I guess it would have been about 2:45, because 3 o'clock is closing time, and said, Harsha, do you have like a small amount I need? How much? Like 90 million. Then I said, look, by that time I had turned my ship around, and I was actually lending, right? Because I wanted to try and balance the losses that we had made. And I said, no man, just run short, and just you get wrapped by the central bank in the morning. He was too scared, and somebody offered him 90 million rupees, and he borrowed it at 123%. So this is, this actually happened.
And you had no real experience as a treasurer at it.
No, but see, so I didn't borrow at 123%. I probably lent that around maybe 70-80%. So there was a particular, say about a month and a half, 2 months period that was so volatile, because see, this is the point, you want to develop nations, you want to have development banks, you talk about these big things without understanding how a development bank really works. Unless you have long-term finance, you cannot do development banking. You cannot, by that time, DSCC Bank, NDB Bank, subsequently all became, the development thing was there, but they became banks. Earlier it was called Development Finance Corporation of Ceylon,
That's right.
DSCC Bank. It was called National Development Bank, NDB Bank, right? So the whole model changed, and they started collecting money from depositors, short-term money, and trying to lend long-term. So that's a different subject. So that's why I have a deep interest in this topic, and my PhD thesis also is related to that. And so that's how I joined DFCC Bank. But I told Mr. Prelis after a while, I said, Mr. Prelis, this is too boring. I got to do something else.
Now you're in a very interesting field in politics.
No. After that, I did many other things. 2 of us
Nielsen
co-founded a company that became a very large research company, largest, Nielsen, and so we created a very interesting enterprise. Sold it to the world's largest information and research company, Nielsen. Subsequently, left that. It was a great entrepreneurial success, which actually gave me the opportunity to get into politics.
Right.
Because I don't come from a rich family, or neither do I come from a politically connected family. I'm just a son of 2 public servants.
Right.
And with my entrepreneurial success, it gave me the financial freedom to do whatever I wanted to do, which I invested my proceeds in a meaningful way, and then I worked with the World Bank and ADB, also with the UNDP, with Learn Asia, with Rohan, and did for about 10 years. I worked in about 15, 16 countries. So that got me a whole lot of experience in sort of economics, development, and my focus was then shifted more towards information technology.
Right.
So I've published some papers on ICT and development. One at the MIT Press, ICT for D, where we talked about the mobile phones at the time.
Right.
I'm talking maybe 2002, 3, that time, 4, 20 years ago, when people didn't really believe that what we can do with mobile phones now was possible. And I belong to kind of the minority that argued we should actually use the mobile device rather than the kiosk device.
Right. Yes.
So there was this big debate about kiosks versus mobile phones. And then I did a lot of things on my own because it just interested me. For instance, I started something called Govinyana Seva in Dambulla, in the market.
Okay.
How to use telephones and Wi-Fi to collect prices and distribute it among farmers at the spot level. Then how do we make it into a more forwards market? People didn't even understand. I paid 90,000 rupees in telephone bill to Sri Lanka Telecom by myself on a monthly basis. My wife said, look, please, think of your priorities. So anyway, it became something else. Dialogue has taken it over, things like that. And so creating efficiencies in markets. And only after that, Kusum, I came to politics in 2010.
And when you entered politics, Dr. Harsha De Silva, you were brought in by the current president,
Yes.
President Wickremesinghe. Recently, I heard you made a comment regarding the online safety bill, and you said, I was at that forum when you mentioned that you can't even believe that it's the same guy that has brought these, and it's not the first one. He brought the, I think the high security zones bill, several bills that are, I guess, counter to what you would expect of a liberal, or I guess some call Mr. Wickremesinghe, President Wickremesinghe, a classical liberal. Someone that is of that Enlightenment mold. But where do you think he is right now? Do you think he was always liberal that's changed his spots a little bit, or do you think he's now sort of politically maneuvering himself to match who he's surrounded by? What's your take on it? I just want your personal opinion.
No, it's a good one, because he's the one who invited me into politics. I didn't know him at all.
Right.
Well, I was like the guy who distributed leaflets down Longdon Place.
Right. Okay. So you were UNP supporter anyway.
That was, I was, nothing connected to anything. I just wanted to make sure that the UNP won kind of business.
So
right? We all did that, telephones, work the phones, that type of thing. But it was the day, Rohita Bogolaga crossed. I remember, because he had asked me whether I could come and listen to the budget and explain the budget to the MPs. So I thought, well, that was an interesting request. And I said, sure, why not? So I was sitting there and I saw this, right? And then that was the first day I listened to the budget speech, and then I explained what I thought was to a whole bunch of UNP MPs who were then sitting in the opposition. So when was that? Would have been about 2004, so sometime there. And then people started asking me questions, and people before they went to those days, Jana Handa and all these things.
Jana Handa.
Jana Handa was within the main one. People, the MPs used to come and sit with me. People down my lane probably started wondering what the hell is going on here. Including Sajid Premadas, Johnston Fernando, Bandula Gunawar, all these guys, and so the Ranil Wickremesinghe I knew, we all knew, was that guy who talked to us about liberal policies and about democracy, and we protested and got tear gassed and did all these things, right? And when I see him doing this, I find it very difficult to sort of calculate in my own mind what's going on in his mind, right? Because this is not the Ranil Wickremesinghe that I know. This is a different guy, right? And knowing him, what he's trying to do is, in my view, trying to somehow keep the alliance that keeps him in office and also keeps them in office in some sort of equilibrium, right? So he has to deliver to those guys, and they have to deliver back to him.